Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine in your own home, the place you've trusted with your life, and suddenly wondered if someone close to you was hiding something? That's exactly how I felt the day my wife told me, almost casually, that our home was worth about $800,000 and that we should think about selling it before the market dropped. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just her way of talking about finances. But something about the way she said it made me uneasy, almost like she was eager for something I didn't yet understand. Instead of excitement at the thought of selling, a small knot of worry began to form in my stomach. Her insistence that we needed to act quickly didn't make sense. We had lived in this house for decades, and I had never felt rushed before. But now she seemed almost impatient, smiling too widely as she mentioned a buyer who was supposedly ready to make an offer. The way she spoke made me pause. Why would someone I trusted so completely be so eager to part with something we both built? I tried to focus on logic. Maybe the market really was changing. Maybe she was just thinking ahead. But every time I looked at her, something about her expression seemed rehearsed, calculated. And the idea that she already had a buyer in mind, that made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't explain. Was this just coincidence, or was there more behind her calm, confident words than she was letting on? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. The words 800K kept echoing in my mind, not as a reassuring number, but like a warning I couldn't ignore. And then came the pressure. "We have to decide soon, before it's too late," she said, her tone soft but urgent, the kind of urgency that makes a person suspicious instead of comforted. My mind raced. Why the rush? Why now? And why that specific number? That night, as I lay awake thinking about her words, a horrifying thought started to creep in. What if she wasn't just worried about the house, but was quietly setting something in motion that I didn't yet understand? My heart pounded as I realized that this wasn't just about money. It was about trust, betrayal, and possibly something far worse than I could imagine. And that's when I decided I couldn't take her words at face value. I needed to find out the truth before it was too late. The next morning, I tried to act normal, but every little thing she said now made me uneasy. She casually mentioned the buyer again, as if I should already trust the arrangement. Something about her smile didn't sit right. It felt like she was testing me, watching to see if I would question her. My mind kept going back to that 800K number. It seemed so low. Why would she push for a sale at that exact figure when homes like ours usually sold for far more? I decided to check a few recent sales in our neighborhood. My hands shook slightly as I scrolled through listings. House after house sold for well over $1 million. My stomach sank. Could she really be unaware of this, or was she intentionally hiding the truth? The thought that someone I trusted might be manipulating me made my head spin. Something was off, and it wasn't just the price. When I casually asked her about the difference, she brushed it off with a quick, "Oh, those homes aren't comparable to ours." But there was no conviction in her voice, only a forced calm that made me even more suspicious. I wanted to believe her, but a tiny voice in my head whispered that this was too convenient, almost too perfect. Why push me so quickly towards selling if everything was truly fine? Later that evening, I overheard her on the phone. Her voice was low, almost secretive, and she mentioned the buyer again. Something in the way she spoke, the pauses, the care with her words, made my stomach turn. I couldn't hear everything, but enough to know that she was discussing things I wasn't supposed to know. That moment hit me harder than anything before. This wasn't just about selling the house. It felt personal, deliberate, and hidden. I realized, painfully, that I couldn't trust her at face value anymore. Every casual conversation, every smile, every suggestion now felt like it might be part of a carefully planned story I wasn't in on. The 800K number wasn't just low, it was a trap, and she might have already set everything in motion. My heart raced as I made a decision. I had to dig deeper, quietly, before the first move was made, and I had no idea what I was about to uncover. The next day, I quietly began checking old property records and neighborhood sales, pretending to be interested in nothing. That's when I noticed something strange. Homes just a few blocks away had sold for nearly double what she claimed our house was worth. My stomach tightened. Was she truly unaware of this, or was she deliberately misleading me? The thought that my own wife could be involved in something like this made my chest ache. I tried to confront her casually, asking why our house's value seemed so low. She laughed it off, saying the market was unpredictable and that she just wanted to be cautious. But her laugh sounded off, too practiced, too defensive. I began to realize this wasn't just about money. There was a strange, calculated precision to everything she said. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed snippets of her phone calls, her sudden eagerness to sell, the way she smiled while talking about the buyer. Every detail, no matter how small, started to feel like a clue. A horrifying question began forming in my mind. What if she wasn't just trying to sell cheap, but setting me up for something bigger? I decided to look deeper into the buyer she had lined up. My hands shook as I typed his name into my phone. What I found made my blood run cold. He had a reputation for buying properties far below market value and flipping them for massive profit. And now it seemed he was connected to her in a way that wasn't immediately obvious. My heart pounded. Was this just coincidence or part of a plan? By now, the fear was almost unbearable. I had to keep pretending I trusted her while secretly uncovering the truth. Every casual suggestion she made to sell, every urgent comment about timing, now felt like a puzzle piece pointing toward a betrayal I wasn't ready to face. My mind raced. If she really was plotting this, how far would she go? And how much had I already lost without even knowing it? A few nights later, I caught her on the phone again. Her voice was softer this time, almost intimate, and she was laughing in a way I had never heard directed at anyone else. I froze, realizing she wasn't just discussing the house. There was something personal here. My stomach turned as the first horrifying thought entered my mind. Could she be secretly involved with the buyer? I began paying closer attention to every interaction between her and the buyer. Every casual mention, every little gesture now felt suspicious. I noticed how she spoke about him with unusual familiarity, as though he were someone she had known for far longer than she admitted. The doubt that had been creeping in suddenly felt massive, like a shadow stretching across everything I thought I knew. Determined to uncover the truth, I started looking into their past connections. My heart raced as I discovered phone logs and emails, hidden messages that suggested meetings, conversations, and a familiarity far beyond ordinary business. It was like uncovering a hidden map, and every detail pointed to a chilling reality. This wasn't just a rushed sale. It was part of a carefully planned scheme. The thought of betrayal made me feel sick. I had trusted her completely, and yet every piece of evidence suggested she might have been planning to profit at my expense for months. Worse, the more I discovered, the more I realized that if I acted too soon, I could tip her off. I had to be careful, quiet, and strategic. Every move I made now mattered. By the end of that week, it became terrifyingly clear. The 800K number wasn't just wrong, it was a trap. I could almost picture the scheme unfolding. She convinces me to sell quickly, the buyer swoops in, and I am left with nothing. My hands shook as I realized the stakes were higher than I had ever imagined, and I silently vowed to uncover the full truth, no matter what it took. By now, I knew I couldn't rely on intuition alone. I needed proof. Quietly, I began gathering evidence, checking phone records, emails, and past communications between my wife and the buyer. What I found made my chest tighten. Months of secret messages, subtle coordination, and mentions of a deal I had never been part of. This wasn't just manipulation, it was a well-planned betrayal. The more I discovered, the angrier I became, but also the more careful. I realized that if I confronted her too soon, I might lose my chance to understand the full scheme. Every message I read, every call I traced, painted a picture more disturbing than I could have imagined. My wife had been quietly setting up the sale for someone else's profit. One particular email made my heart skip a beat. It contained numbers, property valuations, and a date for a meeting, none of it shared with me. It was as if she had been preparing for months to ensure the house went to someone else while keeping me completely in the dark. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was deeply personal, and it cut harder than anything I had faced before. Despite the anger, I knew I needed a plan. I couldn't act blindly. I decided to hire a trusted, independent property appraiser, someone who could give me the real value of the house and land without being influenced. If she was hiding something, this would be the first step to exposing it. The tension was unbearable. Every day I waited, she moved closer to finalizing her plan. The day the appraiser arrived, my mind raced with anticipation. What if the 800K number was just a fraction of the truth? What if the real value was far higher and she had been planning to trick me all along? I tried to stay calm as the expert inspected the house, knowing that the next few hours could completely change everything I thought I knew about my wife, our home, and the betrayal unfolding right under my nose. The appraiser walked through every room with a meticulous eye, jotting notes and muttering about structural details and potential upgrades. At first, I tried to remain calm, but every comment he made hinted at something more valuable than I expected. Something about the way he paused and wrote in his notebook made my heart pound. I had the sense this wasn't going to end like my wife promised. Then he stepped onto the backyard and stared for a long moment at the land beyond the house. "Have you ever considered developing this property?" he asked. His question made my stomach drop. I hadn't, but something in his tone told me that he already knew the answer, and that the number my wife gave me wasn't even close to reality. As he explained the potential for future developments in the neighborhood, I began to piece things together. Developers were quietly buying properties nearby, and our land was in a prime location for growth. The house itself wasn't just a home, it was a gold mine, and my wife had been willing to sell it for a fraction of its true value. I sat quietly, letting the appraiser speak, while a terrifying thought took hold. If she succeeded with this sale, I would be cheated out of millions, and it wouldn't just be money, it would feel like losing everything I had built and trusted her to protect. My heart raced as the first spark of a plan began to form. By the time the appraisal report was ready, I knew the truth. The 800K figure was a lie. The real value of the house and land was far, far higher. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was deeply personal. I realized that if I played my cards right, I could turn this situation around and expose the deception completely, and make sure that everyone involved, including my wife, would feel the shock of what they tried to hide. I couldn't let them see that I knew the truth just yet. If I revealed my knowledge too early, the plan could collapse and my wife and the buyer would cover their tracks. So I decided to act calm, to pretend I still trusted the 800K number she had given me. Inside, however, my mind was racing, plotting every move carefully. Every time she mentioned the buyer, I smiled politely and nodded, hiding the storm of emotions building inside me. It was painful to act like I trusted her, but I knew that patience was my weapon. The more confident they became, the bigger the shock would be when the truth came out. I also began casually gathering more proof. Old emails, hidden messages, and subtle inconsistencies in her story. Each discovery added a layer of certainty to my plan. I was not just going to expose the scheme, I was going to make them realize the scale of what they tried to do. Meanwhile, the appraiser's report sat in my hands, a silent promise of what was to come. Every time I looked at it, I could almost feel the disbelief and regret that would ripple across the room when the truth finally surfaced. I allowed myself a small, grim smile. Soon, the house wouldn't just be valuable, it would be the key to revenge. By now, I had fully committed to my plan. I would go along with their charade, pretend ignorance, and let them advance their scheme, thinking they had the upper hand. Little did they know I was ready, and the moment of revelation would be devastating. I could almost hear the shock, the panic, the silent realization. They had underestimated me completely. I played my part perfectly, pretending to be unaware of their scheme. My wife's excitement grew with every mention of the buyer, and she began scheduling meetings, confident that I would agree without hesitation. Every eager word she spoke was a confirmation. They truly believed they were in control. The buyer arrived, full of confidence, offering the 820K they had agreed upon. I smiled politely, acting interested, hiding the knowledge of the millions the property was truly worth. Inside, I felt a mix of anger and anticipation. Soon, their arrogance would meet reality. As they discussed the sale, my wife's confidence became almost smug. She leaned in, speaking about the urgency of the sale, about how lucky the buyer was to get this deal. I nodded along, silently counting every word, every gesture, and every sign of their overconfidence. It was astonishing how blind they were to my awareness. Every assumption they made about my ignorance only tightened the tension in the room. I could almost see the trap taking shape in my mind. The moment I revealed the truth, it would crush them both emotionally and financially. And then, just as the buyer prepared to finalize the deal, I reached into my folder and calmly pulled out the independent appraisal report. Their expressions remained confident until their eyes caught the top line of the page. That moment, that pause, was the exact instant I knew the trap was about to snap. I cleared my throat and placed the appraisal report in front of them. I thought it was time we all looked at the real numbers, I said calmly. My wife's smile faltered just slightly, but the buyer still looked confident, convinced that the report would somehow confirm their 820K deal. The appraiser's calculations were clear. The real value of the house and land was over $4.7 million. I watched as their confident expressions wavered, eyes widening in disbelief. The room went silent, the kind of silence that screams before a storm. My wife opened her mouth, probably to explain or deny something, but the words died in her throat. She had rehearsed her story for months, but nothing could prepare her for this. Every detail of the lie, every secret she tried to keep, was now laid bare before both of us. The buyer looked pale, stumbling over his words, trying to grasp the sudden turn of events. He had assumed I would accept the lowball number without question, but now his scheme had collapsed in front of him. The shock was complete. The trap had worked perfectly. I sat back, letting them process the truth. The betrayal was exposed, the manipulation unraveled, and the real value of the house was undeniable. For the first time in months, I felt a strange mixture of relief and vindication. They had underestimated me completely, and now they were paying the price for their arrogance. With the appraisal report on the table, I calmly explained every detail, how the land's location in a major development zone made it far more valuable than the house itself, and how any quick sale at $800K would have cheated me out of millions. My wife's face went pale, and the buyer looked like he had been punched in the stomach. The full truth sank in slowly. $800K was nothing compared to the $4.7 million valuation. Every plan, every secret meeting, every attempt to manipulate me had been revealed in an instant. Their confidence crumbled, replaced by panic and disbelief. The room was heavy with silence as I watched them realize the consequences of their deceit. My wife tried to speak, but no explanation could undo the betrayal she had engineered. The buyer stammered, unable to recover from the sudden exposure of his scheme. For the first time, I felt a mix of relief, anger, and vindication. The trap had worked perfectly. They had underestimated me completely, thinking I would blindly follow their plan. But now the truth was undeniable, the betrayal fully exposed, and the emotional shock irreversible. As I reflected on everything, a powerful realization settled in. Sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. But if you stay calm, patient, and vigilant, the truth can come out, and when it does, it has the power to shock everyone. That day, the house, the betrayal, and the $800K lie became a lesson that no one in that room would ever forget.